Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Anxiety Chats. Today we are joined by Alyce, all the way in Australia. Alyce has personal experience of anxiety and anorexia and shares her recovery online. Welcome, Alyce.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel so honoured to be here.
Honestly, I don't have personal experience with anorexia, but looking at your Instagram was just so lovely. Like, it's just such an amazing piece of work that you're doing. And a lot of it I could relate to, even though I've not had experience with anorexia. I think the thing that really touched me was you talking about you not just being your anorexia. There's so much more to a person, and it's so difficult when you're experiencing day in, day out mental health problems to not just see yourself as anorexia or as anxiety.
Thank you. Yeah, I find it a lot of the time we do identify as our mental illness and it becomes our whole world. I mean, most of these mental illnesses do consume our world, but yeah, one of the things I'm really learning lately is to separate myself from my anorexia, because I am not anorexia. I have anorexia, but I am not anorexia. And it just reminds you that you are a person as well, and you've got other things going on for you.
100%. And another really interesting thing you talked about was you can be somebody with anorexia and also like food.
Yeah, it really isn't about the food at the end of the day. It's just like anorexia as an eating disorder. It's a coping mechanism that we've turned to for whatever reasons happen. And the way I see it is I've had anorexia since I was about 13 years old. And when I was 13, I didn't have access to alcohol or drugs or things like that I could turn to, but I could turn to food, to controlling food. So that's why I think that became my modality of coping back then. It's really hard loving food but being terrified of it at the same time. But it's not about the food at the end of the day.
It does make so much sense. And like I said, I don't have anorexia, but I have OCD, and I've often seen them as very similar. It's kind of like something that you're using to control the anxiety almost. I don't know if that's your experience, but with OCD, it's like, oh, well, I can do these things and that means I can control the anxiety.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of crossover between the two. Like, I have OCD, mild OCD as well. I was diagnosed with it. And it's because we do have those compulsive and intrusive thoughts that come up, except a lot of ours tend to be around food. So I reckon they do go hand in hand. And yeah, it's definitely a way of controlling everything. And I didn't actually know what was happening at the time. It's quite interesting because I say I've had anorexia since I was 13, but I wasn't diagnosed until I was about 24 or something, when I was quite a lot older. And it's only because I can look back and see the habits and the thoughts and the behaviors all happening when I was younger. But because I didn't fit a stereotype of being super malnourished and skipping all my meals and stuff, it wasn't picked up. I remember my school picked it up a little bit, but they didn't really do anything about it. They just thought it was a phase. And so I've been in and out of those behaviors up until I was diagnosed, and then I got really sick as I got older. I think that's the really hard thing with getting a diagnosis of an eating disorder, is people think you have to fit this stereotype, and that's not the case at all. Like, I think only 6%, and I think that number's even dropped, only 6% of people with an eating disorder are underweight.
It's so upsetting, isn't it? And I don't know what your opinion is on things like BMI, but I think they've since been disproven that BMI isn't actually something that it was like made ages ago, BMI, and it's not actually something that's relevant anymore. And this can be, I know in the UK, this can be the reason that some people don't get treated is because their BMI is, quote, healthy, but they don't feel healthy. And I think this is the really, I don't know what it's like in where you are, but I know a couple of girls that have been knocked back from treatment because they aren't malnourished enough and they aren't skinny enough. And I imagine somebody with anorexia, that's the worst thing you could possibly hear.
Yeah, BMI is, I actually call it bullshit mass index, because I think it's just not a metric that we should be using. So I actually am a trained dietitian. I don't work as a dietitian anymore, but when we learned about BMI, you find out that BMI was designed to measure a mass, like a group of people. It was about the healthy population. It was a Caucasian population. And it was merely just a way to see how the population was trending when it was made. It was never designed to be used for an individual. So BMI is, I don't think it should be used as one of the diagnostic criteria, because people can be anorexic and be classed as obese because their body's still malnourished. You can still be severely malnourished and be classed as obese. It's just ridiculous that the weight even comes into it.
Anorexia is also something that's really dangerous for people. It's something that's, it's one of I think the leading cause for mental health problems in women for things like mortality. And this is obviously a really scary topic. So yeah, why is it that people develop anorexia?
The interesting thing about anorexia is the way I describe it, it's like being possessed. Like you're in your head, but you're not actually living in your head. You're being controlled by some kind of other entity, like this voice telling you have to eat like so many calories, or you have to exercise, or you can't sit down. And so if you listen to that voice, the anxiety reduces. If you go against that voice, the anxiety increases. So we keep engaging in these eating disorder behaviors because it's the way to make that anxiety and panic go away. Because every time you go against it, your anxiety shoots up.
And I think it's pretty much very similar with OCD of, in order to kind of start to feel better in some cases, obviously everyone's different, it's kind of about walking towards that anxiety and being like, nah, I'm just going to experience it, which is probably one of the hardest things you can do, because no human wants to walk towards something that's going to make them feel awful. But the more we do that, I think, I don't know what your experience is, but the more we do walk towards the anxiety and be like, okay, I'm going to try this, I think the more we realize like, oh, okay, it's actually not as bad, or I can handle it. Even if it feels really bad, I can handle this.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. One of the sayings that we have in our in eating disorder recovery is challenge, repeat. So like you face the challenge, but then you got to keep repeating the challenge in order for it to become less anxiety inducing as you go on. And also I always say to myself, cry but keep going. Like it's okay to feel the hard feelings, and it's okay to cry. It's okay to be upset, but just keep going, because it does get easier over time.
How long have you been on this journey of like trying to recover?
I started recovery probably I was hospitalized in around, October last year, I think. And I was in a critical state. Like I didn't realize how sick I was at the time. But I got admitted into hospital and they gave me two options. And it was either I go into palliation or I fight. And so I didn't realize how sick I was. And I said, no, I have to get better. So I've been in recovery for about 6 or 7 months now. And I went all in, which is what we call when we like follow our meal plan to 100%. We stop engaging in behaviors and we do our best to, do all the recovery things. And yeah, it's been a journey. I've still got a long way to go in a lot of ways, but I have done some really cool challenges, and I'm eating foods and doing things that I didn't think I was ever going to be able to do again, because I'd lost so much of my life to anorexia. And yeah, the anxiety part of it is still huge for me. I still suffer from panic attacks. I still freak out over food sometimes. Like sometimes I'll cry my way through a meal, but I just know I have to keep going, because I can't go back to where I was, because my body won't take a relapse again.
It's such a difficult thing, I imagine, to explain to somebody what anorexia feels like and what the voice feels like, because I imagine the voice is very clever. It's almost like it's trying to keep you safe, this anorexic voice. It's trying to be like, no, I know where the safety is. It's down here. We need to lay it low. It's down here. And actually the adult part of us, or the bigger part of us, needs to be like, actually, I'm in control. I know what's best for me, even though you're quite a loud voice sometimes.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. Like anorexia always tries to draw you back towards it, because this is the safe place, whereas eating the food or not engaging in the behavior is the scary place.
What has been the reaction of the people around you to you finding out that it was anorexia? Has it been supportive?
I'm very fortunate. I have a lot of support in my life. I've got a wonderful partner. My parents have been really great. I've got a lot of wonderful friends. And in a way, when I first got diagnosed, I don't think anyone really understood what was happening or what it meant, because they just said, well, just eat more and then you'll be fine. Because it's not rational or logical to be scared of food. Like I always say to people, I will go skydiving, I will bungee jump, I will swim with sharks, but if you get me to eat a muffin, that's what's going to terrify me. There's no logic to it. And it's different for every person, but everyone who I talk to, I just said, just treat me like normal. I will speak up if I feel that something is hard to hear or like triggering, or, we've got to be responsible for ourselves as well during this time, because it is hard for other people, and being mindful that it's challenging to watch a loved one go through this because they're scared they're going to lose you.
And also, I was wondering what you would say to if you had a friend that you think might be going through something like anorexia, if you've noticed that they are getting much thinner, or you've noticed that they aren't eating the same way they used to. Would you say it's a good thing to talk to that friend?
I think definitely. I think one of the biggest predictors of success in recovery for eating disorders is early treatment, as probably is with most illnesses. So I think if you're worried about someone, do talk to them, ask them, hey, I've just been noticing this about you and I'm a bit worried about you. Did you want to talk about it? Can I help you with it? Did you want to go see someone? And just sort of show that you're there for them and show that you care. And, you know, the best thing that can happen is they say, oh, yeah, no, I'm just a bit stressed out, but I'm fine. But yeah, definitely that early intervention is key to recovery, because obviously the longer you're stuck with the disorder, the harder it is to get rid of, because you get those habits and those behaviors ingrained. So I think, yeah, just reaching out to someone if you think that they have a problem. And I mean, a lot of people have undiagnosed eating disorders. They don't realize they have one because they don't fit that criteria. And, you know, we need more awareness. We need more education around it, because it's so easy to slip into these bad behaviors and just be disguised as healthy living or, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I remember there was a time on the internet, which I think the internet, for me anyway, is becoming more of a positive place because people like you are sharing, and also things like the body positivity movement. And there's so many amazing things online, but for a while it was a lot of healthy eating, and that can be disguised as things like eating disorders, can't it? And that's something to be really mindful of, you know, somebody could be just a very healthy person. Somebody could be, you know, just somebody that likes to eat clean. These things could be a disguise for things like eating disorders.
There is a term for people who are obsessed with clean eating. It's orthorexia. And I notice a lot of this, even I noticed in my recovery, when I started to reintroduce more foods back into my diet, I wanted to just have the healthy foods. So I know I've got those orthorexic tendencies. So I've been very mindful in my recovery to do things like add like lollies and chips or chocolates and different fun foods, I call them, back into my diet, because otherwise I will just clean eat, and that's not really recovery at all. That's still a disordered way of eating, because people can be disordered eaters but not necessarily have an eating disorder as well. There are still just behaviors, and that's not a fully fledged eating disorder. But as you said, it is a slippery slope straight into an eating disorder. You don't really live a life when you have some of these illnesses. You're so restricted, and that's what we say, anorexia isn't just restricting food, it's restricting life as well. When you're with an eating disorder, obviously you struggle with your body image a lot, and sometimes body positivity isn't really achievable straight away because, you know, you're in this recovering body, and you might not be happy with it. So body neutrality is another great way to focus. So just being instead of saying oh, that your hair is beautiful, I love my hair, it's just I have hair. You know, it just kind of takes away the connotation of you having to be beautiful and accepting of yourself, because sometimes you just don't want to accept yourself, and that is okay too. Sometimes you just got to be okay, I have feet, that's great. I think in general, body positivity, seeing different bodies out there is a really good thing, because, you know, especially as women, we're not meant to be, you know, super scrawny unless you're naturally like that, because we're meant to have fat on our bodies. Our bodies need fat, our bodies need muscle, you know, and that comes from good eating and nutrients. We need to make sure that we can do things like produce hormones so we can have be fertile, and that all comes from having a little bit extra body weight on us. Women aren't meant to be 0% body fat.
Obviously, when you have something like anorexia, it's not just about body image, it's not just about how you look, there's a lot more to it. But I think for all women, being able to celebrate each other at any size, at any whatever you look like, is a really beautiful thing, and it just helps create that community.
It definitely does, and that's one of the really nice things I've noticed in being in the recovery community is when you see people who are recovered or, you know, close to being fully recovered, and they just look so amazing. And I don't mean that in their body shape or anything. They've just got life back in them again. And I think that's what we all notice, and that's what we all pick up on. They're starting to want to live again, because when you're sick, obviously you don't feel good, you don't look good because you're sick. But when you start to recover and you start to relive life again, it shows, and there's beauty in that.
If somebody's listening right now and they are really struggling and they're not sure how to even begin, and it's just they're having a really hard time with anorexia, what would be something that you would tell them right now?
Definitely reach out to someone or reach out to a support service, because you don't need to do this alone. Anorexia is really isolating, and it doesn't want you to let anyone in because they might help you get better, and it doesn't want that. So I had a really hard time letting people in to help me. I was very closed off. I didn't want any help. I didn't want anything. And it just got me into a really bad place. But now I'm learning to speak up when I need help, and people want to help you. People want to see you get better. So remember, you don't need to do this alone. It's not a battle that is won alone.
It might feel like it's safer, but it's not. I think that's a big thing I'm also realizing myself, is it might feel like, well, if no one can see me, then it's just me and that's safer. In the long run, that's not how things work. And it might be so hard to let somebody in and let somebody see your vulnerable self. But in the long run, that is what's going to help, is letting people in and seeing that. And it might not be very pretty, but it's such a good thing, isn't it?
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Alyce, for coming on today. It's been so nice talking to you. You're absolutely amazing. And your Instagram will be in the link of wherever people are listening to this. You are helping so many people. And like I said, I don't have anorexia, but I've found so much comfort in your posts, and you're doing so well. It's just so great to see.
Thank you so much. That's just the kindest thing. Thank you. And so are you.
You're very welcome.
Don't ever forget that.
And if you are listening to this podcast and you would like to come on and chat to me, I would love that. And if you're not feeling like chatting, but you'd like your story to be heard, you can send us an anonymous story and we can read it on the podcast. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And thank you so much, Alyce, for coming on. This has been a really great episode, and we will see you all again soon. Bye, everybody.